live stream, and I'm going to make sure that the YouTube is on.
I'm going to try to adjust that light that's blurring in my glasses.
Yep. Right, and we are we are live, and that's great. Hi, everybody. If you're joining us, you're very much welcome. We have with us Steve Holier, and
I'm going to try to adjust that light that's blurring in my glasses.
and of course, we want to hear your questions. So feel free to send your questions in, and that's great. Hi, everybody. If you're joining us, you're very much welcome. We have
It's good to see you.
Steve. Sorry, what?
It's good to see you.
Yeah, likewise. Okay, so now we
I'm
have
going to try to adjust that
Steve
light that's blurring
on
in my
the live
glasses.
feed, and we're going to get ready to start with the questions in a minute. But of course, everybody, if you have questions, don't forget you can always send your questions over the chat. I'm going to type that right in right now. Right, there we go. And it's about 1 minute to go, so we actually can talk about anything we want, Steve. By the way, how's the weather in Zurich today?
It's really changeable this time of year because we went from raining all weekend to sunny yesterday. Now today, it's some of both somehow. I'm not sure. But yeah, spring is here. It's coming. No, spring
Well,
is here.
that is
Everything's turning green.
that is good. That is good. But you usually isn't it so that the spring over there starts around mid-April, maybe even end of March sometimes?
Well, it's so changeable, and talking about sustainable product ownership. I've been here in Zurich for 20 years, and the seasons have changed dramatically from what I remember when I first moved here. And now, what we can usually count on is a nice day in February, and a couple nice days in February, some nice days in March. But when you really start feeling like spring is here, maybe go out with just a light jacket, is mid-April. Although in some years we've had really extreme heat in April for a couple weeks, and so far we haven't developed that this year. But yeah, when I first moved here, we were more likely to still see some snow around this time, but it would be intermixed with a nice day. So
Well, you can see snow very close by. I mean, you might even see snow from there where you are right now at the peaks. I remember I used to live not very far from Zurich, and we could see snow well into the summer. Of course, in
yeah,
the mountains, obviously.
yeah. On a clear day, when the weather system's just right, it looks like you just reach out and touch the mountains from my balcony, and you see the snow right there. But in a more normal day, you kind of are aware that they're there in the distance. But some days it looks like you can just reach out and touch them.
Absolutely. So we have 14 people watching. Hi,
Wow.
everybody. Do say hi in the chat. Let us know where you are, maybe. We have the first chat message. Yesa. Hi, Yesa. Whereabouts are you in the world? I'm in Helsinki. Steve is in Zurich. And we're going to be talking about the future and impact of sustainable product ownership. So we'll be starting soon. Just give a minute or two for people to join in the stream and start following us live. And this is, of course, only one of the many different talks we have at the Product Owner Summit. So if you want to know more, just check out productownersummit.org, where all the talks are available. Of course, subscribe here on YouTube and watch the talks as they are premiered during today and tomorrow. Today, Tuesday, 18th of April. Tomorrow, Wednesday, 19th of April. But I think it's time now, Steve, to jump into the proper topic that brought us here today. So welcome, Steve, to this talk at the Product Owner Summit.
Thank you.
So you've worked with product ownership for a while. You have a lot of
Hmm.
experience, not just with product owners, but also with business in general, working with your clients in your role as a consultant and a coach. Uh, but you want today to focus on something that you are personally passionate about, sustainability, and how product ownership, how we as product owners can influence that conversation at the
Hmm.
places of work. So, introduce that topic for us. What do you mean when you talk about sustainable product ownership, Steve?
Yeah, but I'm afraid we'll get into a lot of definitions, and so I'll try to give a few definitions and then let you ask me to draw out some of the other definitions. So I just don't like give definition after definition. But yeah, first a little story about me, and I won't bore you, or I could go on about this story forever, and a lot of people may have heard me do that. So I'll try to keep it really short. Along my journey, I moved to Switzerland 23 years ago now from Texas. And I used to say, I literally, now I'm a little bit ashamed. I used to say, well, I've done what I need to do for the world. Excuse me, for anybody who might be offended by this, but I've done what I need to do for the world from moving from Texas to Switzerland because everything is just a little bit more compatible with environmental friendliness here. But I literally just ignored everything because I had done what I the best thing by moving from Texas to Switzerland. It's a little bit of a joke, but I also really believe that. Now, we all learn and grow, and so I will admit that that was me in the past. But along my travels after I arrived in Switzerland, I was spending also some time in South Africa, and oh my gosh, down in South Africa, I happened to meet these African penguins and some rescued rockhopper penguins. And I somehow formed an amazing connection with them. I consider them my friends. I think they can. I hope they can. I think. Well, I tell people they call me their friend. And once I started to feel like this connection, and to realize that, unfortunately, and the news is more and more dire, the African penguins are very much in danger. They look like they're thriving if you watch their show on Netflix, but they're very much in danger of, if we're not able to do something in the next couple of years, they could be past the point of no return in within 5 years, and we'll hit that point of no return soon. We don't know how soon, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. So my gosh, that's urgent. I just can't bear the thought. I usually break down weeping and I can feel my voice cracking. I can't bear the thought of a world without my African penguin friends. And so that got me started thinking, what can I do? How can I use my skills? What impact can I have that, because I have to say, not on my watch. I I can't let these penguins disappear forever on my watch. So what is it that I'm able to do? Well, I'm able to do agile development. I'm able to do agile product ownership. And so then that leads to the question, how can we create a sustainable agile product ownership?
Absolutely.
And
And we have a lot of influence in the organizations that we work within. Now, we perhaps don't have all the influence we want, and that's okay because everybody is limited in what they can do. But of course, we can take small steps that can have a great impact. Um,
right,
what
I
were
happen
some
to
of
think,
those steps for you, Steve? Like, how did you start to integrate that personal drive to focus on sustainability and the work you did with your clients?
yeah, well, I think when we say sustainable product ownership, there's basically three things in that name. There's being a sustainable product owner. So what is that? We'd probably have to ask, what is sustainable? Sustainable is basically the activities, making sure that what you're doing, consuming, creating is is enough for you and leaves enough for the future, or even for you next year. that that as you use this product, there's always more, because we know a lot of our manufacturing products are based on taking resources out of the earth or resources from different places that we can't renew. And so at some point that has to stop. So sustainable being a sustainable product owner means what you're doing, maybe as an individual, is helping create this abundance, or at least not depleting the resources, or living in such a way, reacting in such a way that there's more, that there's resources for the future. Then there's sustainable product ownership in that concept. So what does that mean? And I believe that means becoming a steward for your product. And we know that a product owner is prioritizing the vision of the product, and that's often based on the impact in terms of business value and customer need. And I have to say, well, there's something really important there that's both important to the business and to the customers, and that's the impact that the product itself that's the impact that the product itself has on the world around us, and whether that's creating a world that can be sustained, or if it's creating a world that's being all used up, so that there's some things left next year, the year after.
Absolutely. So when we talk about sustainability, we of course need to consider these different aspects, right? And you talk about, was it the triple bottom line? Was that the term that you used? Can you tell us a little bit more about that concept?
I seem to be thinking in threes, but the other thing that's in sustainable product ownership that I'll just say, because we started that, is what happens when sustainability itself is the product. As a product owner, are you creating sustainability as your product? There's some really, we can explore that down the line, because I think there's some really exciting things here. And you asked how I'm using my influence. I am actually trying to create sustainability as the product. Although I think we're probably more talking to people who are either being a sustainable PO or developing with sustainable product ownership. So those three. So triple bottom line is really interesting. I think what we have found, there's different ways to approach the triple bottom line. Many people say, and I find this to be true, that sustainability is based on three pillars. And one way people talk about those pillars is to say, people, planet, and profit, which is considering the social aspects of what you're doing, considering the environmental aspects of what you're doing, and then considering the economic aspects of what you're doing. But here's something else. Triple bottom line, along the way, especially around from the 70s onwards, people started talking about how can you balance these out, and started looking for an actual accounting formula. If you can balance the books across your profit dimension, there's two other dimensions there to look at as well: the social dimension and the environmental dimension, the people, the planet, and the profit. And they were actually looking, and maybe still are, looking for a way to balance that out on an accounting basis. It turns out that it's really hard to measure society and planet from a accounting standpoint. And there's a lot of ways to, to gain those measures, and people weren't finding, it's a great concept. And I would really love to just say, product owners, if you can balance the triple bottom line for people, planet, and profit, you're doing great. But effectively balancing that with accounting itself hasn't worked out for us, I believe.
But on the other hand, this is also like a concrete concept that we can attach on to bring conversation to the topic at the places where we work, right?
Exactly. I think we want to attach onto those pillars for sure. We can talk about balancing that triple bottom line, because keeping that in balance is very important. Thinking that we can find an accounting formula that enables that, I think that's a direction that kind of leads us down a different path. What people have found for years is that if you're trying to keep these in balance, being close to the community, not your customers per se, but the community where you operate and the community where your product is being used, the community is going to tell you if those are in balance or not, if you're in tune and listening to the community, which is interesting.
Which is another practice, right, that we can take on as product
Yes,
owners.
absolutely. I think that may be one of the more important practices. We're used to, learning going out, meeting our customers, get on the street to meet your customers, but it's beyond that. It's not meeting your customers, it's meeting the community. What are the different people in your community saying about your product? How is it impacting them? They will let you know. So I think instead of looking for a number for your books, you're more looking for getting in touch with the community there.
Absolutely.
I think she said,
let's go back to the original question, which is, what are some of the concrete practices that you have used, Steve, in your role as product owner, and of course also as coach and consultant to other product owners, to help them bring about this concept and the ideas of sustainability into their practical work?
I think it's a whole range. It depends where you're starting from. And because we're developing this now, I've been really thinking about this now for 2 years, about 2 years, which means I don't have all the answers for sure. But we're asking these questions and we're learning more about it. So I want to invite everybody to kind of join that conversation with me. But one thing, how you just get started in this idea of sustainable product ownership, we think about our personas. We're following Roman Pichler's work or some of the other work in product ownership. We think about our persona board, our product board with our personas, and we're developing the product for these personas. Now, a couple of us have suggested, well, what if you make the planet one of your personas? Invite the planet Earth to the roundtable, invite the planet Earth to your product planning meeting, your backlog refinement sessions, and ask the planet Earth, well, what shall you do? There's different ways to play that game, but often I also find that, yeah, planet Earth, that's so big. How are we going to get our heads around that? So one of my favorite penguins is named Ioba. Ioba is one of these African penguins whose entire species is going to be wiped out. Put Ioba on your persona board and design for Ioba in addition to your customers. What is going to keep Ioba
or some
Ioba's
aspect of the
species
community that
living.
is critical for that product owner's surroundings, right? Like, because let's say we are doing software for, energy production plants, right? So there's going to be a part of the community that is affected by decisions that product owner or that group of product owners needs to make, right?
Right. And in addition to bringing in the planet, Ioba, again, we're talking about on the social aspect side, which is everything that people are we've been talking about with equity and inclusion and designing for people that aren't exactly like you, especially if you're a white man, building the product for people to support people who and be useful for people that are not just like you. So that in addition to putting Ioba as one of your personas, be sure your personas are balanced across the social dimension as well. Something that's really interesting, this is taking a step back, when we say people, planet, and profit, the gentleman who is credited with coming up with that formulation and the triple bottom line was becoming very concerned about how this is being applied, and suddenly realized that if we cross out profit in that equation and turn it into prosperity, it changes our thinking, because we have people, planet, and prosperity. Well, as a profit is, am I getting rich on my product or not? Prosperity is everybody around me becoming more prosperous. So that's a little shift. Some more specific practices are to measure the impact on these different dimensions with your product. And so when I first started working in product ownership as a product owner and training product owners, Goiko Adchik's work on impact mapping was really on the scene. And I think that's more integrated into how product owners work now, and probably can still be more integrated. But when we think about impact mapping, that was about making small experiments to see the impact on the customer. Well, adaptive action, I think, is the best way to address sustainability. It's such a complex system, and there's no way to reduce that complexity, really. You can take little chunks of it, but it will remain a complex open system. And so, just like with impact mapping, looking at the impact on the customers, we can also continually make small changes to the product and check the impact across the three dimensions of people, planet, and prosperity. So I think we're going right back to impact mapping and doing all of that, but also thinking not just of your customer, but of those three: people, planet, prosperity.
So we have a question from the audience, and I think it fits right into the conversation we're having here. Sprinkler asks, "Well, innovation comes with a lot of trials and errors. Is innovation then a waste and an enemy to sustainability?" That's a great question, by the way.
Yeah, it is.
Thank you,
It
Sprinkler.
is. But my quick answer is no. It's not. It's not, unless it is, because we're talking. This is where it's getting interesting, and we're talking about the mindset that you approach it with. If you're approaching it with the mindset of build fast, destroy things, throw it away, that might not be sustainable, depending on what you're throwing away and the resources and the impact. However, I think one thing that we are doing in sustainability work and with sustainable product ownership is looking at the complex adaptive system. And again, I believe the only way to work in this system, which is by adaptive action, which is really compatible with this fail fast. You do something, you see what happens, and then you make your hypothesis and take the next action. So I think this whole concept that you're asking about must be a part of sustainable product ownership. The question is, how is it impacting? We're going right back to what is the impact on the community?
And in fact, like when we think about innovation, when it comes to sustainability, we know that if we continue on the path we are on, we are unlikely to find a sustainable way of bringing about new value and new products to the market. So one might even argue that sustainability requires innovation, but then it requires innovation with that mindset, which was what you were talking about, right?
Absolutely. And I think that brings us to another question that we have to ask. And I'm sorry to throw this whole wrench into the works,
Go for it.
but is ownership really the correct word here? And I don't want to start an argument about terms and make you change branding. But I think it's a good question to ask: is it product ownership or is it product something else? Because I would say, if we look back at what has brought us to where we are, it is the concept of ownership in the idea that this belongs to me, so I can do with it what I want to, rather than this belongs to everybody. And it's my instead of owning it as it belongs to me, I'm accountable for it, and accountable that it continues to create abundance rather than scarcity.
So
For example.
let's dive into that a little bit more. So as product owners, we are accountable for many, not all, aspects of a product development, and definitely a big part of that is what goes into the product and what is required to put that into the product. And one of the things that we need to do is to balance the demands. So uh, let's say we are focused on sustainability, and many of us who are listening to this talk probably already have quite a lot of concrete actions they're doing at
Mhm.
home in order to support the ideas of sustainable development for any economy. Obviously, our own economies here, but there's also other factors, right? Like when we're working in a for-profit business, which many of us are, we also need to consider other factors such as cost, quality, time to market, vendor relationships, all of that. So how have you helped product owners kind of balance all of these different demands while at the same time still having that core idea of helping create sustainable products?
Mhm. This is yeah, that's the hard question, really. And this is why I think you said the product owner is there with a lot of influence. And I think this is one thing. This is less concrete than a less concrete answer than you might be looking for to start out with. But I'm thinking the product owner can be in a position to have a lot of influence on the transformation in that company as the way that company looks at things. So yes, you must be concerned about your shareholder impact if you're a publicly traded company for sure. All of these aspects of quality. It comes back to, can I use this? Can I continue using this product forever at the way that the way we're developing it now? Can we do this tomorrow? Can we do this next week? And then what happens 10 years down the line? It's real interesting to think about tomorrow. And then it's real interesting to think about what happens in 10 years, because 10 years is just enough time. Okay, things can be really different in 10 years. 20 years is so far out there, we can't imagine it. 10 years is enough that we say, okay, so it's going to be really different, but we can still imagine it. So looking at what is it this next week? What's it in the next sprint? What's it in the next release? What's it in the next year? And then what could happen in the next after 10 years? Those are kind of some important questions to ask. And are we always developing so that we can keep doing this tomorrow, next release, next year, 10 years? This is where that discussion of the triple bottom line comes back in, because while specific accounting is hard to reach, adding sustainable measures to the quality metrics, for example, and the profit metrics. Well, profitable for whom? Profitable for the company for sure, but also how is it profitable in the community? And this is a real, I believe we can't continue to survive as humans. I mean, the penguins have 5 years. African penguins might have 5 years. So it's really still time to save them. I want to say that right now. If we all get on it, we can save them. But the penguins are leading. People have asked me, why am I talking about penguins? Aren't people more important? The penguins are actually a leading indicator of marine biodiversity. The African penguin adapts so fast that when they start changing their behavior, it's a leading indicator, one of many, that we're in trouble. So if we lose the penguins, there's a clear indicator that people aren't that far behind. So, yes, our post-industrial society is focused on the things you've talked about: profit, quality, regulatory things, value. That all gets kind of somehow lumped into business value, or comes in metrics beside business value. But if we're going to be on this planet 100 years from now, we must be making a shift from this post-industrial thinking to something else, this abundance thinking, this sustainable thinking. And I think part of that is to start building these sustainability measures into the other ones that you asked about, because they're as important. We know from the complex system that if you shift one thing, it really has an impact on everything else, positive or negative. So that's also why that adaptive action is important. So as you shift something, everything else is going to shift, and you're is really going to take that innovation thinking to figure out, to watch how the things are shifting and go for the better, not for the worse.
When we need to bring that and balance it out with cost, quality, time to market, shareholder value, and so on, we need some concrete practices. One of the things that I thought from what you already introduced is that impact mapping is actually a very powerful conversation starter. Not just something that helps us, make decisions and so on, but also a conversation starter. So let's say we do impact mapping for some of these aspects that might be critical for our products. Let's say cost, and then impact on the planet, or cost and impact on the local community, whatever that might be, depending on the product. I think that's also a very practical way to bring this conversation and make it, and this is the key aspect, right? Because we need to make it concrete. Product owners don't have the I was going to say the luxury of being in a political debate. Like they need to make decisions every single day, right? And we need to make this concrete for product owners. So I was thinking that maybe having an impact map for each of the key areas that we want to be concerned with and help us make decision might be a very practical way to try to balance these different aspects. What do you
I
think?
think right on, and that's why I brought it up. I'm glad you ran with it, because yeah, um, mapping that impact, as you say, it's a key conversation starter. When I was working in sustainability as the product itself, I was working with one of the large um, activist organizations that work in the climate change space. Um, they're very sensitive, and so out of respect to client confidentiality, I'll just have to say that much. And working with them, we I was working with Yuta Exton, who I want to mention a lot. We've been doing a lot of work separately and together on this, and so I need to mention some of these other people like Yuta Exton, who's doing such great work. We were working together on that, and what we were doing is bringing agile Scrum Master, agile coaching practices, as well as agile product ownership practices into this organization. And we had a lot of surprising amount of success. I knew we were going to be successful. I didn't know how successful we were going to be about using event storming to think about the impact of things on the end product, which was sustainability. And so at first I thought, how are we going to do this? These are non-technical people. They know nothing about event-driven software architecture. And that's what event storming is for. How are we going to do this? In the end, I needed to give them a sustainable definition, a definition of the system from a global perspective, a definition of an event in that global system. And then we ran the event storming workshop exactly the way that it's described in the books, exactly the way Alberto describes it. And the results, at least with that group, were great. I haven't been able to try it with another group yet, but I'm ready to. So if somebody's ready to try that with me, of course, get hold of me. Yeah. So that's another specific technique rather than not necessarily a practice. Here's a practice. Many years ago now, George Dinwiddie came up with the concept of the three friends, or sometimes I would like to call it the three partners. And he named it after the movie, so he calls it the three amigos. But I think today I would prefer to talk about the three friends or the three partners. Is those partners with the product owner? He said maybe the QA, a business person, and a system engineer, I think, were his three. I'm not sure if I remember that exactly. I think I love that concept, but now we're talking about the three partners for sustainability. Maybe somebody actually representing the planet. Maybe an expert, somebody who is working, has done this work very deeply into sustainable ecology, or maybe just someone who's asking questions. That's also really enough for us. If somebody who really has that in their purview to ask those questions, representing the community. And the idea of the three partners is to meet them regularly. George also said it doesn't have to be three; you can have more. So I think that's a practice I want to see, is as the product owner meeting representatives from these
Even
different
to
aspects
understand,
regularly.
right? Like you've mentioned several times that the world around us is a complex system, and we don't necessarily even understand all of the impacts that our decisions can have. And to expose our ideas to the outside, to the community around us, can help us do that. Now, of course, that may be already a step quite far into bringing up the conversation of sustainability for us as product owners. For those that are just about to get started, for those that are in the beginning of their journey, to bring the thoughts and ideas of sustainability into their product development process, what advice do you have for them?
couple of suggestions. One is just to start that conversation by asking, what if the planet were one of our customers? How would we behave? As I referenced that before. What if Ioba, the penguin, was one of our customers? How would we have to behave? Or, you know, Ioba's cute and I like Ioba, but it can be something else, the koala or the giraffe or the orangutan. That's just one way to start the conversation, just to be asking that. Uh, that takes you so far. I think the UN did us a big favor, the United Nations, by creating the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, which, after much committee work and the Brundtland Commission, the UN has said there are 17 Sustainable Development Goals that looks across the three pillars of, again, people, planet, and prosperity. So there's different goals for different areas. But they drill down a little bit more. So there's specific marine goals, there's specific goals for equity, there's specific goals across all of these. There's 17 of them. So I think one thing that's very valuable, somebody's just laid that out. I think people sometimes use them well, and sometimes people could use them better. But if you're looking to see, how can I measure my impact, choose some of those 17 and
Might be
see.
great conversation starters also to do with those three amigos that we were just talking
Yes.
about.
Yes. Start measuring how you're doing on those goals. Pick the favorite ones for your company, but then realize that sooner or later we need to address all of them. I don't think any organization is meant to address all of them at once, but yeah, that's a great conversation starter with the people in your company, both the developers and the people that you're developing for, the management, the board. And that's a good way to go. One other thing, Yuta and Claudio Melo and myself had the great opportunity to create an assessment for agile sustainability. We didn't specifically have product ownership in mind, so it might be something that your Scrum Master brings in first. As a product owner, you definitely bring it in. The Agile Sustainability Assessment is an open source assessment, so you're free to use it. You're even free to adjust it. It's distributed by Comparative Agility. What that is, it's a bank of questions that ask the people taking the assessment to think about all things across these three areas with specific ideas. Like one of them is how are background processes running in your application, because background processes are taking energy. So these do have an aspect on impact on sustainability. Background processes, are they necessary? They're just running them because, hey, we have cycles, so let's use them and let's use that energy. So there's a discussion to be had there. There's a discussion about, is the product does the product have planned obsolescence built in that creates e-waste? That's not sustainable. These kinds of questions. There's also questions about how your development activities themselves are impacting community and planet and prosperity. So I think everybody's invited to bring this assessment in, work it with your teams, work it with your management, work it within your product owner community of practice. And I think the first impact there is that you're just starting that conversation, because as people take that assessment, they will say, I believe, what do background processes have to do with sustainability, as an example. And in that discussion, you start realizing, oh, they do. So then what are the other inputs? So it really is getting that discussion going. And if you're going to say, we're going to come back with that assessment in a few months, it keeps that discussion going. And it also gives you some measures and some targets. So there's a lot of ways to use that. So I want to invite everybody.
The conversation is something that we can maybe take initiative on rather quickly and without much research and prep work and so on, because the conversation is supposed to take time. Not everything can be immediately implemented, but there are certain things that you can find are perhaps easier to get started with as we do that conversation. Sure. But of course, as we start that conversation, there are also challenges, and I'm sure you've worked with people that have of course, faced some of those challenges in their role as product owner. So when it comes to that, what are some of the biggest challenges that face product owners when it comes to creating sustainable products, and how you help them overcome those challenges?
Mm-hmm. I think we are very much right now where we are right now in that starting conversations phase. So I think one of the biggest challenges right now is just the awareness of it. And here's something else. I think this is hard. I even read an article just a few days ago that says sustainability means reducing your carbon footprint, and that's true. That's one aspect of being sustainable, but it's one of many. So I think one of the challenges we're facing is the idea that if we score a good goal on carbon offsets or reducing carbon emissions, then we're sustainable. So in such a complex system, I call it wickedly complex because it creates wicked problems that can't be solved with any one easy answer. In fact, they actually can't be solved at all. We can work on better solutions, we can work on improvements or the opposite of improvements. So it gets better or worse, and we want things to be better. But in our lifetime, we're not looking at any single fix for this crisis. It's impossible. It's just not possible in a wickedly complex system. So I think one challenge is any thinking that says, here's the answer. And that's our challenge, is to keep that conversation going, because that's part of the answer. That might be a great part of the answer, but it's part of that answer. And that answer definitely has unintended consequences in other places in the system. So even that great answer is probably creating some harmful impact somewhere. So and we want to try to, we'll never find it perfectly, but we want to be working on that balance, that we're always going for the better. So I think that's our biggest challenge, is to have that conversation, that it's not just this one answer that we've been given. And man, that one answer is so attractive. Man, just give me the answer and I'll do it. And so that's our challenges. And, it's just those kind of conversations. It's the same thing we've been doing with agile. It's the same thing. Maybe I shouldn't even bring this up. Same thing you've been doing with estimates for years. Is that's not an easy answer, or it's not the easy answer I want. But we've just got to keep working at that transformation, as you've shown with the estimates conversation. Or the no estimates conversation. That's an important conversation to have it, and we keep at it, and things begin to shift.
So we got a question about where to find the agile sustainability assessment. You mentioned comparative agility. Is that where people can find the agile sustainability assessment, Steve?
That's exactly where. And depending on what they're doing, it's sometimes the first thing that pops up when you go to the site. Sometimes it's not, depending on their promotion right now. But you'll definitely find that there. I think we'll put a link in to this video. The link's not there now, I'm sure, but we'll put a link there that'll have that reference, plus references to some of the other things that we've been talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll put the link there. And for those of you on the YouTube channel right now, you will see it also on the chat box to the right of the video, or below the video if you're on mobile. You will see the link there. Now, starting the conversation itself is one of the biggest challenges that we face as product owners, of course, as you said. And it's not always easy. Sometimes it's a frustrating process. But if we really believe in what we are talking about, I think it is upon us, it's incumbent upon us to find new and innovative ways to bring that conversation into the places that we work at. And we talked about a few of those conversation starters. So impact mapping would be one, looking at the UN 17 Sustainable Development Goals and how they apply to our product and our community would be another. Talking about triple bottom line would be another. Using the practices like Three Amigos would be another way to start the conversation. Do you have some other ways in mind, Steve?
Yeah, one low hanging. Let's get really basic with low hanging fruit. Your definition of done. How is your sustainability built into your definition of done? And as you start looking at all the things you can mention, And in this conversation, you can think of different ways to measure that in the definition of done. You know, I think by now everybody realizes we're not just talking about sustainable pace, which is where this industry started talking about things. Well, by now we figure you're not trying to march your developers to death, so to speak. We're talking about much more than sustainable pace. We're used to let's keep that in the conversation of the definition of done. Instead of we should be able to, well, the principle in agile is we should be able to develop this continuously, and that was always spoken of as it referred, and it did only refer to sustainable pace, but you can take that same principle and say it sustainably means it's leaving a world, creating a world where you can keep developing. And so you can put that in the definition of done. Does this release, how does this, have we checked how we've checked how this user story impacts all of our personas. We've checked to see that it doesn't require a significant increase in processing power. We've checked to see that it's not creating e-waste, this user story does not create e-waste, things like that. I
Absolutely.
think that's a really good start.
We're getting close to the end, though, Steve. But you have been thinking and working in this space for a while. So I did want to ask you one last question. Looking forward, what do you think will be the key trends or areas of focus when it comes to sustainable product ownership in the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah. Well, first, I think there's got to be a trend for more than for looking at multiple dimensions. Because what I'm seeing, and I'm sure this isn't universal. What I'm seeing is that a lot of organizations are focusing on one or two measures. Carbon. In our personal life, we're not using plastic straws. Please. Plastic straws are harmful to penguins, but just giving up your plastic straw is not going to save those penguins. So I think we're going to be, one challenge is really figuring out what the multiple dimensions are. I think we're really looking at a challenging period of socializing this message because everybody wants to be sustainable, but we're not talking about an easy answer to sustainability. We're talking about something that's difficult. We're talking about a shift in the way we do product development. So that's for the next 5 years, that's our challenge, is hashtag sustainable product ownership, or hashtag, I don't know.
Well, it's about sustainable businesses in the end, right?
Yeah.
Like it's just how we contribute in our role as product owners to that aspect. All right.
Exactly.
So if you
Yeah.
could recommend a resource, could be a book, a podcast, a series of articles, a blog post, whatever that might be, for those of us who want to go deeper and learn more about sustainable product ownership, what would that be, Steve?
I'm going to cheat a little bit here and say what we're talking about is viewing everything in product ownership through a sustainable lens. So first, I'd say any great book on product ownership is a good book here. Reread, Roman Pichler's book. That's a great one. But as you read, ask yourself, how is this asking myself, how is this impacting the people, the planet, and how is it contributing to not just the company's profit, but to prosperity? So that's my hedging my bet. So there's some great product owner books, and I think taking any one of them, and even some that are less great, taking those and looking at it, considering these new dimensions, Guico's impact mapping book might be the best one to look at here, but considering impact across the three pillars of sustainability. The other thing, we've already said it, but I would just really recommend the Agile Sustainability Assessment as a good conversation starter.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll put the link to all of those in the notes below the video, so go ahead and check them out. And Steve, we first of all want to thank you very much for your generosity with your time and your knowledge, for sharing all of that experience and insights with the community. Where can people find out more about you and the work that you're doing?
You can connect with me on LinkedIn for sure. Steve Holier. I look like this. Uh, there's my name is so unique, but recently the world is huge and the internet connects everybody. I found some other people named Steve Holier, and what is an agile coach in New Zealand or something? Like how can there
What
be
a
there was
coincidence.
so it's the one that looks like this. Connect with me on LinkedIn. We're gonna put link to the page, to my page. My company is Engage Results because that's what we want to do. We don't want to just talk about it. We want to engage the results. So I will put the link to product ownership page there. I want to invite people to start connecting with me in some product owners. So if we were scrum masters, I'd call them coaching circles, but we're not. Let's call them product owner circles, or we don't have to get hung up on terms, to begin asking these questions together. So I'd invite you to do that, and start, and um, I'll keep updating that page with more information and ways to get in touch with me. And yeah, hey, I do this, and if I can come help you do it, I'd be really happy.
Absolutely. We'll put the link to Steve's page in the notes below the video. So make sure you go there. It's easier. You just click that link, and also to engage results and the product owner page on that website. Steve, what's your one last parting word of advice for our audience today?
I'm going to go back to that idea. I think we're near the beginning of a very important conversation, and the people we're talking to are really important. So thinking about George's contribution, the thing is finding your three friends, your three partners, and being regularly in conversation with them when these are your sustainability friends or your sustainability partners, somebody representing the community, someone not only representing the community, but really being the community for you, somebody representing and being the environment or the planet, and somebody representing or being the prosperity. Add these three to your other three amigos, and I think that's my.
And why not get a group around you and be the three friends or three partners to each other, right? Like if you get a group of four people, everybody's got a three partner group for them, right? And
Mm,
role playing can be a powerful aspect of that relationship.
yeah, and invite me. I'll be your friend. I'll
Yes.
talk about penguins a lot, but invite me, and I will be your friend. I won't just talk about penguins. I can talk about other things.
Yeah, and of course, Steve has a lot of tools in his toolbox, as we like to call it here on the Scrum Master Toolbox
Mm,
podcast,
mm-hmm.
that can help you start that conversation and explore the multiple dimensions that product ownership needs to take into account. Steve, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for being with us.
It's been a pleasure, and I'll go back and look at the what people left because I can't watch the comments on YouTube and talk to you at the same time. So I'm going to go back and see what comments might have been left
And
there.
of
So
course, Steve, you can join us on Slack and also interact with the community and bring your thoughts there as well.
all right, we'll do that.
All right. Bye bye, everybody.